Hello, how are you? And welcome to another LifterLMS Masterclass series. This week we've got Nathan Tyler. Nathan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Nathan was here yesterday. We were talking about appointment scheduling and his product, Simply Schedule Appointments. Like I mentioned yesterday, if you weren't here, I'll restate it. Last week on our podcast, which is called LMS Cast, we released the episode we published with Nathan, and in talking to him in that episode, we'll put a link to that in the chat. I realized what Nathan was up to is really in alignment with some of the pain points and opportunities that course creators face. What we're going to talk about today is more of a pain point, but it's also an opportunity. Yesterday we talked about scheduling and how to like automate that, and the value of adding coaching to a course concept in the stack. But today we're going to get more into the pain point of having a website break, which is, a lot of people come over to LifterLMS and come over into the WordPress ecosystem for lots of different reasons. But one of the things they like about it is the ownership of the platform, which was one of the great freedoms of owning your website instead of getting locked into a hosted LMS where you have monthly fees and limited flexibility and design control, and there's really limited options. Where when WordPress, when it's all open, there is there's so much you can do, and you have all the power of the WordPress community in terms of other plugins and themes and design and developers that you can bring in to add functionality that you create out of your mind. It's a beautiful thing. But WordPress updates, your plugins have updates, your theme has updates. Perhaps if you add any custom code to your site, it may not quite be compatible with some kind of update somewhere, somehow. And Nathan has been looking at that problem for a while, and I have some horror stories maybe I'll share later of updates gone wrong. But so we're gonna get into that. He's got a really neat tool called Staging Pilot. It's a tool, but it's also like a service. But even more than that, it's a peace of mind, and it can also save you a ton of time. So I'm really excited to introduce Nathan and Staging Pilot to you today. We'll put a link down below. There's some bonuses that come if you decide to invest in Staging Pilot for your business. We're also going to be giving away a little later in the call a $99 add-on from LifterLMS, or you can apply that to a more expensive product or one of the bundles. Or if you're an existing customer and you win the giveaway, which we're going to randomly select from the attendees here, you can get your license extended. So that's coming a little later in the call. But for Nathan and Staging Pilot, and I'll say these again later, but just if you want to check these out, head on over to lifterlms.com/staging. And basically, there's 3 bonuses there. Everyone is going to get a free 30-day trial if you want to try it out. There's going to be a lifetime 10% discount if you use the coupon code LifterLMS. And then Nathan's offering, which is very generous, to build 3 custom tests specifically for your site. Now, that's going to make a lot more sense once we get into the presentation here. But that's there. And Nathan's also going to do a giveaway for anybody who signs up for the 30-day trial within the next 72 hours from this live webinar, which is happening Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, May 15th. You'll be eligible for a giveaway that we're going to draw, and Nathan's giving away a free one-site plan for 1 year on Staging Pilot to the lucky winner, which we'll announce that to that person, of course, but also follow up on that in the Facebook group. But before I hand it over to Nathan, we've got some more people joining. So I just want to, if you guys would, we always love seeing where people are calling in from. If you type it in the chat, I just wanted to give a warm welcome to Anthony, Dale, Darren, Diane, Gerard, Graham, Harry, Jonathan, Jonalyn, Kev, Mary, Michelle, Patricia, Paulo, Richard, Scott, Sheriff, Tammy, Tom, Tyler, Will. How are you all doing? We've got some folks from Nevada, Scotland, Vancouver, Florida, upstate New York. Awesome. Keep it coming in the chat. Minnesota. I am in Maine. Nathan is in California, somewhere near my business partner, Thomas Levy. But that's enough of me yipper yapping. Nathan, over to you.
All right. Thanks for having me again today.
Yeah.
So today I'm talking about crash proofing your website. So I've been building websites for clients since about 2002, 2003. I've been doing WordPress work since maybe 2007, might have been my first WordPress site. So I love WordPress, but as many of you know, like with all the great freedoms and all the reasons that Chris talks about, that we all love WordPress and why we're on this platform, the flexibility and the control over our data and our business. We know that it can sometimes be a fickle beast, and sometimes a plugin update can break your site or make it behave unexpectedly, or when you end up with a screen like this with a big white screen of death and your stomach drops, you're somewhat on your own to reach out to resources and figure things out. You can't phone up WordPress and ask them to fix this issue. So there's definitely some risks and some pain points that come along with taking this big leap. And we can talk about some of these scenarios, and we could probably go on for a whole hour just on these. But I have a buddy who actually has like an online course, and he worked all night on a big launch. And maybe this is a familiar story, but he stayed up for 24 hours straight and put all the final touches on his site, and got ready to pull the big trigger. He scheduled his guest posts, he did everything, and then clicked publish and collapsed in a heap on the bed. Woke up much hours later only to see no sales at all, and something, maybe it wasn't the perfect pitch, but he knew something must be up. And sure enough, that some update had quietly broken his registration and payment form for his site. He was not using Lifter, of course. Otherwise, it would have been less likely to happen. But needless to say, these things can happen in the WordPress ecosystem. You're almost thankful for a scenario like this, where you get a big white screen of death. It's very obvious that something is broken and you need to deal with it. But there's also all sorts of hidden things, like some plugin updates, it breaks some line of JavaScript, and the way that works in your browser, as soon as JavaScript breaks, no more JavaScript executes on the rest of your page. So no other plugins. If you have a form submission through Gravity Forms, it may not be submitting those submissions anymore, and lots of things can go wrong. So Chris, I'm sure you have similar scenarios that you've encountered.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, a lot of times this isn't a problem, but it's that 1% of the time, or that 5% of the time when there's a problem. So we get complacent, and a lot of people have to learn this one the hard way, not having a backup, not using a staging environment. And then all of a sudden they get the white screen, or what's even worse, like you said, people may not be aware, a month goes by and the payments aren't working, and you had no idea. And or people can't enroll in your course, or your quizzes aren't opening, something. And the other thing I just want to mention too, with all this craze with managed WordPress hosting and making WordPress more approachable, which I see as a very good thing, a lot of hosting environments are updating things for you automatically. So you may not even be aware when these updates are happening, and then all of a sudden you might have a problem.
Yeah, sometimes they're pushing security updates, and sometimes they're pushing core updates, and they're like the sophisticated ones that are trying to do good for you are doing some testing, but they're basically testing to see if your site has white screened. And with all the world of managed WordPress, there is some more safety, in that, there's a backup point, and I can always just roll back to yesterday if something crashes. So there's even kind of a more numbness to this problem, because it doesn't happen 99% of the time, and then I can kind of roll back. But it doesn't protect you. Like if your payment form and everything looks fine, and then like a month goes by and you're like, but I haven't really been getting any leads through my contact form, and you realize that that's broken. You can't just roll back your whole site because you've been getting payments and comments on your blog and all sorts of things in the meantime. So there's situations like that too.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add too that we're all really, really busy as course creators. I talk about the 5 hats of being an expert, being a community builder, being an instructional designer, being a technologist, and being an entrepreneur. So this is one of those technology pieces that if time is a limited resource, when Nathan showed me this, I'm going to be getting this on our LifterLMS e-commerce site. I mean, we have lots of sites, but I'm going to be putting it on there because I want the updates coming, and we don't, what we do instead is we wait sometimes quarterly or whatever to update when it doesn't have to be that way. And I just wanted to throw that out there. We're all really, really busy, and what Nathan has here is a big time saver. I'd also like to add that if you have a horror story from an update, let us know in the chat. Just like, it doesn't have to be a super long essay, but like what happened. And just to be clear, if you're very new, sometimes LifterLMS is people's first introduction to WordPress. What we're talking about is the WordPress software itself has updates. The various plugins like LifterLMS and our Stripe payment gateway have updates that roll out. And then your theme has updates. So all these things, have to magically work together. So, and sometimes, not frequently, but 1% of the time when you run updates, something large or small isn't quite right. There might be a problem there. So,
right. Yeah. And part of the trick is that each install is like its own unique snowflake, right? I mean, everybody has different combinations of plugins. Like, obviously, you build LifterLMS and your add-ons are super well tested with LifterLMS, but it's not uncommon for a site to have 90 plugins installed, and you can't possibly know the different combinations. Some of them custom developed, some of them, just third-party plugins that are at various levels of quality. And it only takes one to be a problem.
Yeah, and Patricia says in the chat that her entire site was red listed after a theme update, and it killed her server, and she had to recreate the entire site, and it was an absolute nightmare. And maybe we should talk about too how do most people run the update? They just like click and pray nothing goes wrong, or they ask their technical person to do it 4 times a year or every month or something. Or the other thing, if they are doing proper testing, they may have a local or a staging copy of the website somewhere, and then they test everything manually to make sure, and then they go back to the main site, and then they update everything and they retest again. It's very either risky or time consuming. Those are the options. Those are the current options.
Yes. Or the third option is just to never update, which is
which is the worst one.
Yeah, which is even worse, because then your site can get hacked, and that will tank your brand and your search engine rankings, which are irrecoverable. So the options are not good, because either you're clicking and praying for the best, or you're doing all the proper steps that you should be doing. But if someone is really actually creating an isolated staging copy, doing all the updates there, and then testing every single thing on your site and submitting contact forms and submitting payments, like if they're doing all of those things, it's taking so much time that nobody has time for that. And if you do, then maybe we can switch places.
And one of the other major things too, which you just mentioned, taking payments and whatnot. It's one thing if your website is a brochure, like some marketing pages, like about, contact, maybe some blog posts and stuff. But if the website, like with a learning management system, online courses, or a membership site, if the website is the business, this is your baby. Like, you need to take good care of your business. Like, you wouldn't just like, if you had a brick and mortar business, like, just kind of throw caution to the wind when you were doing a renovation of the building, you know? So, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I just believe this is an important issue, and with great power in the WordPress ecosystem comes great responsibility, and that responsibility is challenging and can be time consuming, but what you have here has made it easy. So I'm really excited to introduce that to the LifterLMS community. And full disclosure, we are a referral partner for Nathan. But we only promote products we believe in and people we trust. And this, when I first heard about this, I was like, oh, wow, like we need this. So I can't wait to see your presentation here.
All right. Yeah. So we'll both get off our soapboxes and start giving you solutions instead of problems. But I mean, basically what everybody wants is, you want to focus on your business. You want to be writing content. You want to be giving value to your learners, and you want to be focused on that part. You don't want to be focused on WordPress or the technology or whatever bug, or just losing sleep over what you don't know that might be going wrong. Basically, you want your site to always be up to date. You want it to always look exactly the same, and you want it to always work the way it's always worked. So if you think about Staging Pilot, our product, there's security products like you might be familiar with Security or Cloudflare, or you might be customers of WP Engine, and you might go to those places to make sure that your site isn't getting hacked, and you're putting a security layer on your site. We're kind of like that in that Staging Pilot is protecting your site from updates and things breaking. Not necessarily malicious. Most people are not putting in malicious code in their updates to make sure that it breaks your Lifter site, but it's unintended consequences of running 90 different plugins, a unique set of plugins that nobody else has on a different server environment that nobody else has. There's just unintended consequences, and so Staging Pilot protects you from that. And so we really
one more thing. I just want to jump in there. I forgot to mention earlier. We're going to get into some like really cool features here, and it's going to inspire some ideas in you and questions. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom. You can use the chat too if you like. But if you have any questions as Nathan's going through how all this works and what it's all about, please feel free to ask. If you're watching this inside of the Facebook group, we'll also circle over there to check the comments over there. But as he's talking, I know you're going to start having questions. So as you have them, feel free to capture them in the Q&A, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. And we'll do a thing too if anybody wants to go live just to discuss anything. There's a feature in Zoom where you can raise your hand and we can chat live too. So please feel free to ask questions. Thanks.
Okay, so we want to make clicking that update button like a thing of the past. You shouldn't be having to click update. You shouldn't have to be testing your site. Basically, our dashboard will give you a summary of like the plugins that have been updated. So here's just like a quick history on this site. We've updated Lifter yesterday, and this is like what our process is. So this is sped up way much quicker because we're doing a lot of diligent testing behind the scenes. But essentially, all those best practices that we just talked about with Chris, like we designed our system around if you hired a human who had all the time in the world, their full-time job was, they're making a 6-figure salary and their entire job is to make sure that your site is up to date all the time, what would they do? And they would do the things we described. They would make a test copy of your site. So they would clone it to a staging environment. They would make sure that that staging environment is identical to the live site, pixel for pixel, check that all the pages look the same, make sure everything's still working. Then you'd perform the updates there. So perform updates on whatever plugins have updates available that night, update WordPress core, update your theme. And then we do testing there. So make sure, click through all the pages on the site, make sure they look the same before the update and after the update. Make sure that you can still register as a customer for your course. Make sure you can take a quiz make sure all those things are still working. And then if they're all working, then we deploy them to the live site. So that's like, based on what we're trying to accomplish, that's what somebody would do if that was their sole life responsibility, was to take care of your site. And what results is, like, if something breaks, so our platform does all of those things. And if something breaks, so here we have like a WooCommerce update, was updated from 3.12 to 3.20. And you can see it detected just a small change, 5% change. Site didn't white screen or anything, but it can actually detect small changes. So you can see even just the styling on your menus can break, with a simple update. So we can detect even small things like that. And you'll get an opportunity here in this test result to say, oh, I'm actually fine with that kind of change. I don't really care. I just want to have it pushed up. Or you could say, hold off. I want my developer to look at that, or I need to contact WooCommerce, or I need to contact support and get this resolved. But this is the kind of thing that Staging Pilot is built to detect. So it can detect small changes like this, or even if you have like a form. This was an update to Gravity Forms, I believe, that changed just some of the padding. And so there was a custom designed form. You can see like all these different labels got bumped a little bit. So Staging Pilot is basically keeping an eye on your site with like much closer eye than probably even a human would detect. Because if I were just to load up this page at a glance, it would look fine after the fact. Unless you were really inspecting every pixel on the page to make sure that it looks exactly the same. So that's like kind of the first layer of what we're doing, because we want to turn on automatic updates for your site, so you don't have to worry about it anymore, but you obviously want to have the confidence that it's still working and it still looks the same. So yeah, here's that screen where you get a chance to say, apply those updates to my site, or let the test run again later. So the real magic part, the screenshots is a good first look. Make sure that your site looks the same. But the real magic starts when you start testing the functionality. So every update on your site is fully battle tested on your site, not just testing. The Lifter team does a lot of testing themselves with every release. Make sure that all the functions are still working. But this is actually on your site with your 90 sets of plugins and all your unique circumstances. We actually run through the updates on your site. And so we do the screenshot evaluation. You can see like these pages are 0% different. They're all the same as they were. So that part passed. But now we do an extra layer where we're actually, what are the core features that your site needs to do? And we do that with every update. So you can actually see here, we go through the process of taking a quiz. So we actually fire up a browser and we're actually typing things in and clicking buttons on screen and making sure that you can go through a quiz as a student. We can make sure, obviously, the most important is getting that money for new signups, making sure that the registration form still works, make sure that I can go from scratch and sign up for your course and enroll. Make sure you can go in and complete a lesson. So you can see we're just going through those steps, exactly what a human would do, clicking through the site, going through these processes. Here I've simulated a failure. Of course, it's not a real failure, but you can see that in this example, we have failed to enroll in a course. And so we highlight that step and show that it broke, and then we show, like here, this is the plugin that broke it. So basically, you have like an extra set of eyes all the time, on your site, going through and visually inspecting everything and testing all the functionality after each update. And you could take this test result and you could forward it on to, Lifter support, or you could forward it on to Yoast support and say, hey, what's going on here? And the best part is that all this testing happens in an isolated staging environment. So none of it's affected your site at this point.
Wow, that's super cool. And so it's not just visual, you're also just testing, the Lifter functions. Like imagine, like you have the login test. Mm-hmm. Like imagine something as simple as all of a sudden your customers could not log in. I mean, that would be really bad. And it might actually take you a little bit to actually hear about it. And yeah, it's cool because it's not just visual tests. Like you're going through all the like key functions. And I just wanted to highlight too, one of the bonuses that Nathan has, if you go to lifterlms.com/staging, bonus number 3 is 3 custom built tests specifically for your site. Could you describe what that means, Nathan?
Sure. So we've tried to build in the common scenarios. Like if you have LifterLMS installed, you want your customers to be able to, take quizzes, enroll in courses, log in, sign up, all those basic things. And we have support for some other plugins, like we have Gravity Forms. We're automatically going to test that the forms are submitting, that they're getting into the submissions database. So we have these built-in tests that we can identify just on the plugins that you have installed. But every site is always unique. And so basically the custom tests are an opportunity. We hop on a call with you and we say, let's pull up your site on a screen share, show me, what are the critical things that you want to make sure are working on your site at any time. And we record that discussion and that screencast, and then we turn those into actual tests so you get this equivalent running on your site. So it might be some one-off thing that's just specific for your site, but you want to go to this landing page and you want to, click here and make sure this is still working. And we'll write those tests specifically for your site. And then in the same kind of interface, every single time, we update any plugins on your site, we're going to do that custom test for you. And that is all going to be running for you too.
Super cool.
So, so one of the next questions is usually, how does this thing work and how do you install it? Is it a plugin? And because we're running all of these processes and they take a good deal of time, and we set up the isolated testing environment. So if you're using, WP Engine, we don't steal your staging site from you because you might be using that for, content and, other kind of testing purposes. So it's a service that attaches to wherever your site is hosted. So we have an integration with WP Engine and Pantheon. You would basically just add us to that install. And then we would hook up our whole platform to that. Or if you're hosted anywhere else, you just give us like FTP access, basically. You put in the FTP credentials, make us an FTP user. And from that, we create the whole testing environment and do all the tests from there and then deploy them over SFTP. So it'll work, wherever you're hosted.
And just to be clear, I think that's an important point. If you are on something like WP Engine that already has its own staging environment, Staging Pilot doesn't need to take that over. You can still keep using that and use staging how you've always used it. Staging Pilot has its own staging environment where it basically pulls the website with the updates, runs the tests. And if it passes 100%, it'll update for you automatically. And if it doesn't, it lets you know it didn't and exactly where the issue is.
Right. Yeah. So it's actually super helpful for, support teams too. They can get you help much faster too. If you come to them with something really specific, like that's much more actionable from a developer's perspective to say like, oh, I can see exactly this page broke with this update. And it's much easier than trying to kind of communicate, oh, I clicked update on all, 50 of my plugins and something broke.
Something happened. Yeah. It's really, I love how you focused on that. Like you said, if I had somebody full-time on staff that was paying $100,000 a year to just test every update, you've kind of taken that concept and built it into software, which is super cool. And just the time savings, not just on running the updates for you instead of you or somebody on your staff, but in terms of when there is an issue, that 5 or 1% of the time, when you go to whatever plugin is causing it, or the 2 plugins together that are causing it, or the theme, you're not wasting a lot of time with very general support requests. Like I updated and my site broke. You're like oh, I updated it and there's a problem with the Yoast SEO plugin, or Gravity Forms will no longer submit. I mean, that's once like, oh, that's what's going on. It's super helpful. And that just the time savings, I can't say emphasize how huge that is, especially for whatever company or person is going to be helping resolve the issue that was found.
Yeah, yeah. And by default, most of our customers have it on like a weekly basis. So these updates are running every single week, which is way more often, like you said, even you guys do like quarterly or something because it just takes so much time. And so, I mean, you can get your updates more frequently, which usually will reduce issues anyway. But then, you also are saving, like getting way more testing time than like you can reasonably allocate from a business perspective. So even though like we're in a world of managed WordPress where it's easy to kind of spin up a staging site, but still that actual testing time to really inspect everything really carefully, it just doesn't happen practically because of the cost for somebody to do it carefully and do it well. So I just want to show you the process of just like adding a site to the system so you can kind of actually wrap your head around what because a lot of these things are kind of feel very magic, but it's a pretty quick process for getting hooked up. So here's like an example site that we're going to load up. You can choose which hosting company. We have some built-in integrations or just anywhere with FTP. So this one happens to be a WP Engine site. So we're just going to copy the credentials in with the FTP user. We've added the user to the install on the WP Engine side, so we can do the deployment with Git. So first thing we do is we actually scan the navigation of that site. So when you enter your site, we're actually crawling through and finding all these URLs. These are good screenshots for us to take. So we're saving you a little time even on the setup process. We're just crawling this navigation and finding, what are some pages we should take screenshots of. So we take a lot of the first level links, and then we take some sublinks. But you also have an opportunity here. You could add any specific URLs that you wanted to test. If you wanted to test a landing page that's maybe not linked from your homepage, but is something that gets used a lot, you have an opportunity to do that. And that's going to give you kind of baseline set of screenshots. And then we install a little plugin on your site that lets us communicate with it and see some of the updates are available. You get an opportunity here to say, hey, there's some plugin I never want to update because I know it was customized or I know it's a problem. So you can say like, never update WooCommerce or never update this plugin because my developer has done so much hacking to my theme that we're going to handle those separately outside of the system. So you have the flexibility to do that. And then you click Finish Up. And then from there, we kick off our process, which spins up the testing environment. We do about 50 or 100 of these like checks to make sure that everything's in good standing. So it can take a few hours, but basically after you've submitted that form, you're done with your part. And we create a full backup of your site, build the test environment. We do all the testing and configuration, and then we would run your first set of updates. And from then on, then you'd be on your automated weekly process.
Super cool.
So, and so like I was saying earlier, you saw the example test for LifterLMS, but we also have the test for WooCommerce, MemberPress, Gravity Forms, other popular plugins. And we're working on adding more. So also just curious from this call, what combinations of plugins people are using, if there's any super common ones that we could build an automated test for. With Gravity Forms, we just find the contact form that's on your site and then we go and we submit it. Lifter, you saw we take quizzes and register. WooCommerce, we go through a full checkout process. So we add a product to the cart, we go to the checkout screen, we go through that. We also have, so like for WooCommerce and for Lifter, for that matter, for actually handling payments, like we can switch to, with WooCommerce, we can like switch to a cash gateway so that you don't actually want to be processing payments every week as you're testing. You want to make sure that the theme is working, the plugin is working, all these things. But you don't.
So how does that work? How do you do the checkout then?
So it actually happens all on the fly with our, code. So we actually will switch away from, like we'd switch from the Stripe gateway or authorized.net gateway to the cache gateway just for the purpose of that test. So it won't affect your live site. So that's another thing, was we never actually modify your production database. We pull everything down. So we have that isolated testing copy, and we might manipulate it there. We might be registering users or going out and checking out. But all those things just happen there for a couple minutes, and then it gets destroyed. So we would just switch the checkout gateway to be cache, or if you're using Stripe, we can just switch it to test mode. It would actually end up in your test dashboard in Stripe. So that's how we handle it for like WooCommerce checkout. We would do the same for Lifter or MemberPress or any of these.
Very cool.
So yeah, I mean, the idea is that you never have to worry about these updates again. We highlighted some of the failures, but the ideal situation is like this just runs every week quietly without you knowing about it. And if every test passes, all the screens look the same and all the functionality is still working. Our robots are going through and doing all this stuff all the time for you. And then the update gets deployed to your site. So you could log in and see a summary of what's been done at any time. But by default, most people just configure it so they get notified if something was going to break. You get an email, or if you have Slack, we can push right into a Slack channel that says, hey, we updated these plugins, something broke, go view the test results. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind of turning it around from, instead of this burden and responsibility of having a WordPress site and dealing with updates, instead now you've got a system that kind of runs itself, and you might have to deal, then you're only dealing with that 1% of the time, and you're not thinking about the 99% of the time.
Super cool. And what does it look like if it does find something and it sends an email? And let's say I'm a busy course creator and I have somebody on my team who handles the website, and I'm going to give my tech person, what do I do? Do I just forward them the email or what?
Yeah, so you can forward the email. By default, we've made these test results public. So it's a long URL, so no one would ever guess it. But basically,
so it's a link that people who are involved in the solution could share around.
Yeah, so you could copy and paste the link right to what we're looking at right now. You could.
So I don't even have to get a screenshot. The screenshot's already done for me too, which is what I would need to send to somebody who's going to help me.
Yeah, and it's interactive too, because you can step through each of these steps, and you can see if it broke on step 4 of the registration form or whatever. You could just copy it and paste a link to this test result to your on-staff developer, to the Lifter support team, whoever it applies to. You can just send them this link, and if you send it to a plugin developer, I can tell you as a plugin developer, I'd be very thankful to receive a report like this rather than I updated, it's broken. It's really helpful, and you're going to get faster support. If you give somebody something really specific like this.
Yeah, and I would concur with that. Just on the Lifter side, when you have really what people want who are involved in the solution is they want reproduction steps, but this is even better than reproduction steps. It's we found the issue, and this is exactly where it is. So we're already past that in the troubleshooting process. That might save 3 to 4 back and forth to a resolution. That might be that might just be I don't know. I would argue that maybe that would be one turnaround on the reply, problem solved. Here you go. And this is a thing we do at LifterLMS is, sometimes the conflict is coming from something outside, completely unrelated to Lifter. But when we can see it easily, what the problem is, it makes it easy for us to help resolve the issue, even if it's not something that we, created inside of Lifter.
Yeah, even if it's not your fault, you can say, they updated this random plugin, from this version, and it's just not a combination that you were aware of or it tested. So, but it can, then what it is, and you can get an answer quickly.
Cool. Well, let me just run down the bonuses again. If you decide to invest in Staging Pilot, I know this is a little, kind of technical. But I hope you're seeing the value out there, because, that time you update and things don't go well, you'll wish you had something like this. But everyone is eligible for the 30-day free trial. So you can, try it out for 30 days, get a couple rounds of those weeks of tests happening. and seeing, watching it update automatically and, hopefully green lighting all the way through. But if it does find something, that you'll see that, and which would be a lot of peace of mind knowing that's not happening on your live site, and you can figure it out in advance of that update. The bonus number 2 is a lifetime 10% discount when you use the coupon code LifterLMS. And then bonus number 3 is Nathan's generously offered for him or someone on his team to build out 3 tests specifically for your site. So if you have something like, okay, I want, after people sign up for my course, I have this like kind of custom workflow that I ask people to fill out this form and then do this other thing. Like he could build out a test to test that, so that this automated testing engine is doing 3 custom tests outside of all the visual testing and standard testing that it's already doing, which is very generous and fantastic. Also, the people that do sign up for the 30-day trial within 72 hours of this live webinar, we're going to be doing a giveaway drawing, and one person will win a free year of staging pilot for one website. So thanks, Nathan, for putting that in the pot. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're also going to be giving away a $99 LifterLMS add-on, or you can apply that to another product or get your license extended. Awesome. So should we get into Q&A?
Yeah, do you want to do the troubleshooting thing first, or should I?
Troubleshooting. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but we should get into Q&A soon, because I think it is a pretty complicated product. Like, it can look very complicated. The actual use is fairly simple. Basically updates are done for you unless you hear otherwise, and that 1% of the time you can act on them. Most of the demos and everything that we've shown is kind of to give you the confidence, the links that we've gone to make sure it's a safe process. I'm sure we'll get lots of questions on that. I'm happy to discuss any of that or specific use cases. But the last thing before we lead it off is a 2-minute thing. As I think Chris described, it's the downsell. If you do nothing else, even if staging pilot's not the right fit for you right now, like we have a tool that we've released called Plugin Detective on the WordPress directory. So
that's a free plugin. That's super cool. When Nathan showed me this before the call here, and I just can't tell you how I'm excited for this free plugin. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, this plugin will help you detect plugin conflicts and resolve them. It's not going to write the code or fix the code for you, but whenever you get an answer from a support company that says, or a plugin company that says deactivate every plugin and then reactivate them one by one, so we can figure out what the problem is. That's a necessary part of figuring out what the problem is, and there's kind of no alternative to it as a developer. But as a site owner, that's a terrifying prospect to deactivate all my plugins, and my site might get more screwed up. It just feels it's a very tedious process. If you have 80 or 90 plugins, that the prospect of doing that is an hour or 2 of your day deactivating plugins, even if nothing goes wrong. And so Plugin Detective is built to solve that. And even better, if you have Plugin Detective installed now before your site crashes, it can actually even help you resolve a white screen error. So if you reach your site like this with the fatal error, if you have Plugin Detective installed already, you can actually resolve that error with Plugin Detective. So I'll show you that process real quick. So you frantically click refresh in hopes that will fix it somehow. It doesn't. So you go directly to your Plugin Detective URL. There's instructions on how to get that in the installation notes on the repository, but basically you have kind of a recovery URL that you can go to that will help you get your site out of a broken screen. So we go here and then you just log in. And this login still works even if your site is down. So this brings up our helpful robot, the same staging pilot robot, Otto, who's going to help you get out of this situation.
And this is instant, like you're getting help right away as soon as you're encountering the problem. There's nothing more frustrating than submitting a support ticket somewhere or calling your developer, and now you got to wait and your site's down. So you can get going right away. Cool.
Yeah. So the first thing it does, it loads up your site in another little window there so you can see your site with the fatal error. You can use this to diagnose even small issues, and I'm showing a white screen to be dramatic, but even if you have some unexpected behavior or something that's not behaving right, you could use it to troubleshoot that. So you can use it for anything. But here in this case, you were saying, yes, I see the problem right now. I see that fatal screen. And so now what the plugin detective is going to do is going to ask if you need any required plugins, like my site will white screen if I don't have this one enabled, or if you're troubleshooting, there's some conflict between Lifter and something, you could mark LifterLMS and say, this is a required plugin. So the very first thing it will do, since we did that, is it's going to say, we're going to deactivate all your plugins except for LifterLMS. Let's just make sure that the site is fine with only Lifter running. So we'll start that interrogation, and of course, it's working fine. So if you have just a vanilla install with LifterLMS, there's my site. Huge sigh of relief, and I say, yes, it's fixed. So now what it's going to do is it's actually going to do different sets of plugins for you. So rather than deactivating one by one, it actually does it in a smart computery way, and will actually do it half at a time. So this site had 31 plugins, I think. So it did Lifter by itself. Now it's doing 15 active. And so now it's going to go back and refresh your site, and you need to say, no, it's broken. So now it's actually going to do the other 15 and put those back in. And so it's simplifying the process for you. So you can just say, yes, it's fixed, or no, it's broken. And it's going to help you narrow it down. So at this point, see, it's cleared 16 of these suspects. And it's important to note here, too, that fixed or broken doesn't mean my site looks perfect. It's just the problem you were looking for is gone. So obviously, you don't want this with the LifterLMS courses shortcode, like it's not perfect, but we're not seeing that white screen error, and that's really what we're troubleshooting right now. At the end, we're going to put everything back in, but we're going to identify that the white screen error is fixed. So here we would mark it as fixed. All right, so you're getting a hang of the process by now, but basically you're just interrogating, he's swapping out the plugins for you, you're saying it's fixed, it's broken, it's fixed, it's broken, and you're seeing them kind of get cleared one by one. So now we're down to just 2 plugins. It's either Duplicator or Jetpack. So we're going to start, oh, it's broken. So now we're going to say it's still broken, and then here you go, your culprit has been found. There's Jetpack. You can just take that information, and to be fair to Jetpack, I just hard-coded a fake error into it. It was not actually Jetpack's fault in this case. So you can deactivate the plugin right there and take care of the problem, or you can just go back to your WordPress dashboard if it wasn't like a fatal error. But in this case, I've just deactivated it. Now, if I jump back over to my other tab and refresh, the site is back and operating normally.
That is super cool. That is super cool. And maybe while I'm talking, Nathan, you could throw a link in the chat to the where people can get that on the free plugin repository.
Sure.
And it's called Plugin Detective. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
That's awesome. So I just wanted to say, like, this is one of the reasons I wanted to introduce Nathan to the LifterLMS and the general course building membership site community. For those of you that didn't know him, him and his team and his partners are obviously very talented developers. He does a great job explaining things. He builds great looking products. I mean, that looks like the most fun experience you could ever have with a broken website. And not only is it fun and interactive, but you get a solution at the end, and you find out, like, okay, it was this plugin where the problem is. Again, that reduces the number of steps by now when you go to get help, if you're not able to solve it yourself, your starting point of troubleshooting this issue and getting a solution is like way far advanced, and you're saving 4 or 5 other interactions to get to that point. So that's super cool. So that's it. The plugin is called Plugin Detective. You can install that from your WordPress plugins where you normally add free plugins, or you can find it on what we call the WordPress repository, the place where all the free plugins are. That is super cool. And if you're so basically Staging Pilot is like a done for you version of that pretty much. I mean, how would you describe the difference between your free plugin called Plugin Detective and the service called Staging Pilot?
Sure. So Plugin Detective is, if you've ended up in that dire circumstance, you can dig yourself out real quick. Staging Pilot prevents you from getting there in the first place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because we're doing all of those updates and tests in an isolated environment, and your problem won't even reach your site. So you shouldn't ever have to get there. But Plugin Detective is still useful, even if it's not a fatal error. Particularly if it's not a fatal error, it's really harder to track those down. Like if there's some kind of conflict, or maybe it's even just a layout issue. Like you have 80 plugins installed, and like Gravity Forms looks weird, like all the form fields are gigantic or something. But obviously Gravity Forms works on every other site. So it's something specific about your site, but going about figuring that out can be a pain. The more plugins you have too, doing them one by one is just unfeasible. Whereas, using this, even if you have 100 plugins, it's only kind of 8 or 10 yes or no answers before you have your solution. So, in the most dire of circumstances, you shouldn't have even needed it. Staging Pilot will prevent that for you, but it's also a good thing to have on your site just for basic troubleshooting and development.
Yeah, and I know I'm not sure how new this Plugin Detective plugin is, but I would dare to say that this is almost like I would put this in my like short list of the top 10 plugins you would want to have. I like taking a minimalist approach to plugins, but something that useful, and people often go after, myself included, like the sexy functionality. But what about like future proofing your website when there are problems? It's not as sexy, but it's almost even more important than whatever sexy layout thing that you're going for, animation thing on the front end. Because when your website goes down, especially if your website business goes down, time is money. Getting the website back online is critical, and that's what a neat tool.
Thank you. Yeah, and it can help you get your site, right back up, or it'll also give you more information to contact a developer, because if you contact a developer with a problem, your support guy, and you say, I have already done this, I've already run this, or I can tell that this plugin is the problem, but I can't disable it, because XYZ, at least you've given them a huge running start to helping you get it resolved.
And shameless plug here. Can we get some love for Thomas and Sarab in the chat? Because developers of products, at Lifter, we really care and we keep going. You go back and forth. Sometimes you have questions figuring out the issue if you're having a problem. And Thomas is a genius when it comes to isolating the problem, but he's always operating with incomplete information at first. But if you come with complete information or at first, that is like, you're going to get your result faster. The people helping are going to be happy because you're just making it easier to get to a solution, and they can focus on what they do best, which is like solving the problem, not figuring out like what the problem is. I mean, they can do that too, but it's not the highest and best use for their time. Cool. Well, I think we should probably get into questions. Before we do, I just want to reiterate one more time. I'll run through it quickly. If you decide to invest in Staging Pilot, first of all, you don't have to invest right away. You can do the 30-day trial, free trial. So that's bonus number one. Bonus two is a lifetime 10% discount when you use the coupon code LifterLMS. And all this is over at lifterlms.com/staging. And then bonus number three, which is really generous, Nathan's throwing in 3 custom-built tests specifically for your website. So if you want that, the testing system to run a specific test that you invent in your mind, that's a process that's critical to your business, he's willing to throw that in there. And he's also going to be doing a giveaway with us after the 72 hours. The people that have signed up for the free trial, we're going to give away a free 1-year, one-site Staging Pilot, which is valued at $59 a month. So Yeah, I kind of think about when I just saw the number like $59 a month or whatever the price is. I think the way to think about that is like people don't get really excited about buying insurance, but it's really important. What if you had some insurance and some peace of mind around, future? I mean, that's important. It's not super sexy, but it's important as a business person.
Right. Well, and if the risk is that much higher if you have a site that's collecting money, right? Like if you lose one customer, I mean, you know how much your customers and your plans are worth, but I'd venture to say if you lose, one or two customers a year because one of these issues crops in that you don't see when it happens, it's much more significant on a site, where you're running your business on it.
Yeah, and I can just verify that. I've seen sometimes with whether it's like a marketing website or e-commerce system, or even like in the Lifter, like in a Lifter plugin or one of the ecosystems, one of those other tools, things don't always pop up right away. Like sometimes an issue lays dormant for a while, and knowing that like something like this is going to catch it like quickly is I just know that there's human error. Part of that human error is running the actual tests. The delays in running the tests, like, oh, we're too busy to update, we'll do it next month. We're too busy to update, we'll do it next month. And now we might have a security hole open. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Getting the humans out of it is really cool. So I commend you on what you've built here.
Thanks.
I'm going to take some questions. If anybody wants to raise your hand, go ahead and do that. I'm going to start in the Q&A box. I'll hit the chat, and we'll see if we have anything in Facebook as well. But let's start right here. Is the payment gateway a sandbox format? If you test a login, would it put users in Lifter's control panel or leave everything untouched? So I think you get the gist of that. They're just worried about the data that's happening in the testing.
Sure. Yeah. So all the payment, basically anything that happens in the database. So your content, comments, payments, all that stuff happens in the isolated testing environment. And with payments specifically, we're either not going to write a test that touches payment data unless we can sandbox it. So like if you're running Stripe, we will switch to the, every Stripe account has a sandbox environment as well, a test mode. So we will use the test mode of Stripe. If you're using Stripe, if you're using, PayPal or something, there's not an easy way to fake that. Then we either just won't run the test because we don't ever want to jeopardize payment data, or if it's possible, like with WooCommerce, we switch the checkout method. Instead of being credit carded through PayPal, we switch it to pay with cash, which means we're testing every other part of your process, but not the actual payment. It's usually a fairly safe assumption that the actual payment is not the problem, but it's probably somewhere else in the funnel that's preventing them getting to the checkout, or the tax calculation is throwing an error, or something like that.
And just from that kind of risk management point of view, the only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing Staging Pilot does with the live production site is if it gets the green light, it sends the message to update WordPress plugins and theme.
Right. It pushes the updated files over, and it will update all your plugins and themes there.
Cool. We have an anonymous question. Can you use it while you are designing a site for testing the site? So I think that question is, if it's in production, like if you have a client, can you use it while you're, in development for a client?
Yeah, so you can use it during the development process, particularly if you're doing like a lot of heavy customizations to Lifter or something. It could be useful to, if you're an agency doing LifterLMS work, you could hook it into your process. So, if you're developing it for 2 or 3 months, you won't have to worry about updates during that time. Plus, you would see if anything happened to break. So I think if that's the question. Another common question we get is like, can I use it like as a staging area, like WP Engine staging? And we like to clarify that our testing environment it's very temporary. Like we just spin it up, we run all the tests, and then we destroy it. It's not meant to be doing like content work or any kind of ongoing, it's not for development purposes like most of the managed WordPress systems have their own staging environments. Pantheon has a huge developer platform. Rebuilding that is, a whole nother can of worms. So, we're really focused on just making sure that updates don't break. So anyway, I hope that if either of those was the question, I think that's
so it's a temporary staging environment just for testing updates. And you may use your other like if there is a problem, you're a developer or whoever, or maybe some plugin support team will ask for access to your staging environment. That's where they're going to go to actually like test it and fix it. And that's also where, if you're like testing new plugins or testing some updates yourself or whatever, you can do that in your staging environment. So yeah, I see how there could be misunderstanding around that. You're actually getting a new type of staging environment that does not currently exist.
Yeah, it's basically a testing environment. And the reason that you can't really work on it is because, we're running all those tests. And so like when we're signing up a user and then when we log in as a user and when we complete a quiz, after each of those tests, we reset the database because you can't recreate the same user with the same email address multiple times. And we want to make sure each test is run separately. So if you were in there working, we would be like resetting your work. And it's because that we're doing stuff specifically for testing. So yeah.
That's cool. The next question is how about a sophisticated theme like Divi? If somebody has like a really sophisticated theme or page builder set up, what do you say to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's even better for those situations where you have a lot of design and layout things going on. And with page builders, there's a bit more, magic going on than just hard-coded HTML. I love page builders and use them, but like there's more things that can kind of slip away from you or be affected by third-party plugins. So the screenshot technology would pick up kind of any visual change. It doesn't actually matter to our system what it was built with. It's going to do a pixel analysis, and it should look the same after every update, whether it was hard coded from scratch or whether it was built with a page builder. And the more sophisticated your layout, the more room there is going to be for things to shift on you unexpectedly.
Awesome. Yeah. So the more I would just concur. Like if you've got something fancy, you need this more. So especially from a design perspective and, the visual change inspection, which is themes mostly create visual things. It's a great tool for that. Catherine has a question. She says she bought LifterLMS and did not implement it. Once she learned the tech, she was reasonably savvy, but understanding how to implement when she has an existing site and all the other things she's got to integrate make her eyes glaze over. Right now, she's using the Aveda theme and a totally separate back office for coaching courses, etc. The path just wasn't clear. And then she mentions that she loves the idea of the scheduling from the site, which check out. We'll put a link in the chat to yesterday's webinar, lifterlms.com/appointments. That was about Nathan's product called Simply Schedule Appointments. But I wanted to bring this comment up because of how challenging it was to set things up and having her eyes glaze over. I totally appreciate that. And, we were talking about the 5 different hats that, course creators wear. They're an expert, teacher, community builder, technologist, marketer, entrepreneur, everything. There's limited bandwidth and capacity for the technology piece. So what Nathan's done here with Staging Pilot, if you have a WordPress website, this takes a huge burden of technology time off your plate. And when you do need help, it gives you a tool to get help faster and in fewer steps, which is super cool. And I know like LifterLMS, there's a learning curve to getting going in that. And, there's people out there who have, set up services that can help with the setup time if you're more of the teacher and don't have the time or the inclination to really get into the technology. But I just wanted to acknowledge your comment. And I know the feeling when you're dealing with tech and your eyes glaze over, and you're frustrated and you don't have the time, you don't know what to do. So I don't know. I think you have more of a comment than a question. But do you have any comments on that one, Nathan?
No, I mean, that's WordPress is great, but it can be really overwhelming. We get all that freedom, but you do get all of the baggage that comes with managing that. And if you can kind of push through the launch, especially, and kind of get your right set of tools around, and resources, identifying a developer or like you said, a service that will help with setup, having a partner who understands the space that you don't want to necessarily navigate, is really great, because then you can just understand, the 20% of it that gets you out of, 80% of the problems, and then you can just go to your resource the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I saw some questions coming in the chat, and while we're going through some of those, if anybody wants to talk live, please feel free to raise your hand. Let me go back up to where I started seeing some questions here. So Dale just wanted to confirm, so you update on the staging area and confirm that the broken things are okay, adjustments to visual design versus bad e-commerce, courses not working. Then you can make a decision on what to do, talk to Yoast, SEO, or Lifter, get advice on how to address an update problem. Is that right? So let me just take a stab at it. I think, yeah, so this happens automatically. You're going to get an email if there is like a LifterLMS or Yoast conflict, and with a link you can click on that shows you exactly where the issue is, that then you can then take to LifterLMS or Yoast support or to your developer. And let's say our developer gets it resolved, and we want Staging Pilot to run another test. Can it do that, or how do we do that?
Yeah, so I mean, it just will run again on its own automatically, because sometimes you might get a test failure and it might just resolve itself, right? Like it might be, it's a problem with Yoast, and 5 million people use Yoast. So, you can also decide it's not necessarily worth my time to file a support ticket. It's probably a known issue. And then, next week when the updates run, Staging Pilot will just update it, and it'll be a new version of Yoast, and it will just work. So Staging Pilot will always try again on its own, but you can also—
So an option is to do nothing.
Right, yeah. We're doubling down on the do nothing mentality of the product, is like, you really shouldn't have to deal with this. So sometimes, we have a lot of clients that, that first, they don't even really respond. It's just like, oh, that's nice to know, but they don't actually do anything until the, second or third failure comes through. It's like, okay, maybe I should, contact somebody about this. But the beauty is that it hasn't affected your live site, so it doesn't cost you anything just to wait. At a certain point, you gotta handle it. But so you can wait, and sometimes that will resolve the problem. You can also trigger a manual update. So if Thomas gets back to you tomorrow and says, "Oh yeah, we fixed it. We pushed out an update for Lifter. It'll take care of that conflict for you that you found with some obscure plugin in this weird scenario." You can go into Staging Pilot. You can log in and click Queue Updates, and it'll run its process manually. So it'll trigger it off at any time, but you can also just wait.
Yeah, that's super cool. And just kind of public service announcement, I guess, plugins and themes, sometimes there's something called a major release, like a major point release, where, like, let's say WooCommerce is going from 4.9 to 5.0. You may notice that, like, at 5.0, which is a major update, lots of changes and everything, that you're getting some error messages about something. So you could, like, I personally would probably just hang back, do nothing, and wait for 5.01 or 5.1 to roll out, and then it might resolve itself. That's what I would do, because a lot of times, especially with major updates and brand spanking new plugins and things like that, there's these little teeny incremental fixes that come out. And then it's just an education. You're just allowing Staging Pilot to keep you in the loop. Oh, there's a little issue here. Let's see if they resolve it on their own, or if I need to get involved.
Yeah. Well, and now that we've done thousands or tens of thousands of updates at this point, we actually have a pretty good pulse on some of the different combinations of things that are problematic, or if there is a problem, like we're getting tons of failures with WooCommerce 5.0 as it rolls out, we'll put a halt on it on all sites until those revisions come through. I mean, Staging Pilot would catch it anyway, but it also just means we can
proactively.
Yeah, proactive, and let the rest of your updates still roll through. until we kind of remove that quarantine on that plugin. So we do some more proactive stuff like that. And, our support, we're also available as a resource. We're not necessarily going to, spend hours on your site specifically in your scenario, but you can also email and say like, hey, have you seen, I'm getting this test. Is there any other data you could throw my way? Are you seeing other people with conflicts between these two plugins? Or, and if we have it, we're happy to share that and try to point you in the right direction. Yeah,
that's super awesome. Look at that, adding even more value by like quarantining problem children until they get it resolved. That's pretty awesome. Some people are just mentioning that they're using Flywheel. Dale asked, they run in the background automatically. How do we address problems? Does it send an email or something? We covered that. Is this a plugin running on our WordPress site? I know you said it's really an offsite service, but there is one plugin of yours that you install as part that needs to be there for it to work, right?
Yeah. So, it's because we're spinning up the testing environment and we're running these virtual browsers and doing the screenshots and doing the visual comparison and stuff. It's way too much server load to actually run on your WordPress site. Plus, it kind of can't test itself accurately. Well, it's you couldn't build this as a plugin necessarily. So it is a service. It would work kind of like with Security or another third-party service that connects to your site and monitors it and does the updates. We do just install that one plugin so they can our site can communicate back and forth with it.
And do they have to install that plugin, or once they sign up, it happens for them?
Yeah, so it's part of the automated thing, like that import process that we showed. Basically, once you put in the credentials or once you add us to the install on Pantheon, for example, when you click the button in that form, we actually install that plugin in the background. And that's what lets us communicate with it and see which plugins you have installed so you can mark which ones you want to exclude from updates. So all that stuff is in the background.
Cool. We have a feature request from Patricia for H5P compatibility. H5P, if you're not aware of it, is it's like an interactive content plugin that it's like a whole system, and they're coming into the WordPress ecosystem for people doing gamification and some kind of course quizzing kind of features that people find valuable in the e-learning space. So just throwing that out there as a feature request. But also tomorrow in this masterclass series, Nathan has another product. Yes, folks, there's more about interactive content, image content in this case, called Draw Attention. So we're going to be getting into that. But yeah, just throwing that out there. Somebody's requesting H5P. If you haven't heard about that, maybe check it out.
Yeah, I'll take a look. And that's pretty common for Lifter customers.
It's a niche. It's a niche within the community. It's for people. I call it the content problem. Like in WordPress and Lifter, you got your lesson. You can put the video in there. You can put audio, downloads, text. But there's still there's lots of room for innovation in terms of interactive content. H5P is doing that. So that's where that kind of comes from.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that for sure.
Someone's asking if agencies can purchase for multiple sites, or do you have any pricing for agencies? And I know there's some people out there who build LifterLMS sites, or they keep their client sites on their hosting account. So they'd like to use this, or they offer hosting as part of a value add for the client that just wants a hands-off approach. They just want the website. And, if people are doing their own hosting, or they have lots of clients with their own hosting, do you offer anything for the bulk buyer?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually have a whole agency program that's how I actually started building this. Is I've been doing client work forever. And at one point we were maintaining about 150 WordPress sites, and it becomes very unmanageable at that point. So it started out as a internal tool to kind of automate as much of that as we could. And we kind of went crazy with that to this extreme where you can actually be hands off. So we have a lot of features built for agencies, which we didn't really get into because I didn't think it was exactly the fit for the course creators and whatnot. But I encourage you, if you live chat me on the site, I'm happy to do a one-on-one call or just answer any questions on chat. But we have bulk rates that drop based on the number of sites that you have. We also have some white labeling stuff. So We have some reporting options, so we can send you a report by site. We're working on something that will actually send out that report to your customer on your behalf from your email address for you, so that you can offer a maintenance plan and say, we're going to take care of this for you, whether you're hosting the site or they're hosting themselves. We have lots of agencies who basically resell our service for $99 to $299 a month, or maybe they're going to bundle in development hours along with that. So we definitely have a strong agency program, and there's lots of other stuff we could get into. So yeah, definitely get in touch.
Very cool. Jonathan says, looks like an amazing product and plugin. Kev says, looks super cool. Let's see. Somebody else is really impressed. Somebody's in. They're going for it. While I'm reading through this, if anybody wants to chat live, raise that hand before we get into the winner here of the LifterLMS giveaway. There's really been a need for this type of plugin for quite a period of time. Yeah, I think Nathan does a great job identifying, pent up demand for something and problems to be solved and opportunities. Thank you for the kind words, Susan, for the LifterLMS developers. Kevin says that his life right now is one big typo and error message, so he really needs this. Yeah, lots of people are just kind of resonating with the message, and people are just, kind of vibing with it. But Kevin also says he signed up for the trial. He has GoDaddy as a host. He didn't know any better. He got to the remote directory box in the sign up, says it could not find the directory. I think GoDaddy put his WordPress site out of the root. How do I write the directory directions to your app for your app to link? Does he need to contact you, or are you going to do a live support request here?
Sure. Short version, yeah. If you log in over FTP, if you use an app like Transmit, there should be something that shows you that path, and it's probably /var/www in a big long path. So if you paste that in to the point where your WordPress site is, that should get you past that screen. But as soon as I hop off this, I can also hop on the live chat on the support tool on our site and hop on with you or do a screen share and get you past that screen. But,
cool.
Yeah, sometimes that'll happen with different hosting environments. Like if it's got some weird location for it or something, you just have to make sure it's the right path, which is not the most user-friendly thing, but there's not really a way around it. But once you get past the setup process, then you should be all set.
Awesome. He says he thinks he'll figure it out based on what you said, but he'll get in touch. Kathy, do we have any comments from Facebook? Anybody want to go live? Raise your hand and any comments, questions? Okay, let's see here. Let me jump over to Facebook. We do have some questions over in Facebook. Get over there. Oh no, you were saying yes, it's on Facebook. Oh, no Facebook comments. So, Kathy, if you want to go ahead and pull the LifterLMS winner, it is Tyler Woolard is the winner of the $99 LifterLMS add-on, or you can apply that towards something else with your existing license. So congratulations, Tyler. Send us an email at team@lifterlms.com and we'll be in touch about that. And last chance for any live questions. Cool. Well, it doesn't look like we have any live questions, which is fine. If anybody needs to grab any links from the chat, go ahead and do that. The bonuses for Staging Pilot are over at lifterlms.com/staging. I'll just state them again one more time here. Everyone gets a 30-day free trial. You can get a 10% lifetime discount when you use coupon code LifterLMS. And Nathan and his team are going to build 3 custom-built tests specifically for your site. So check that out. And then also we'll be announcing within 72 hours, we want to make sure we honored the people who are in a different time zone or are busy and couldn't come to the live webinar here to be eligible. But one lucky winner is going to win a free one-site plan for 1 year of staging pilot, which is a over $600 value when it all adds up. So we will announce that. But Nathan, I want to thank you for coming and presenting on this. I think this is such an important issue for not just the LifterLMS community, but for the WordPress community. This can save people a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of hassle, and also help the people that help you get things resolved quicker. Because, you know, things don't always go perfect when you own the platform. I mean, sometimes you have a plumbing problem, you have an electrical problem, whatever. These things happen. So it's still important in the digital space. It's easy to get complacent, but it's good to put that insurance in place and have a plan of action. So thanks for coming. Do you have any final words for the people?
No, you know, thanks for staying on, everybody who's left, and thanks for having me on, Chris. And if that plugin detective plugin is brand new, so would love your feedback, you know, constructively to us via live chat or positively with 5-star reviews on the plugin. You know, but if anybody has questions when they're using that, we're also still looking at refining it just a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and you know, obviously at Lifter, we're a big fan of giving some stuff away for free, like the core LifterLMS plugin. That's awesome. You're doing a that plugin detective as a free contribution to the WordPress community. That's amazing. All right, everybody. Check out Staging Pilot. Go to lifterlms.com/staging pilot. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're going to be back tomorrow at this same time with Nathan, and we're going to get into, we're going to take our technology hat off, and we're going to put on our instructional design hat, and we're going to be looking at interactive content with images. And Nathan has a product called Draw Attention. So if you've been trying to make your lesson content a little more engaging than just videos and audios and text, I think you're going to love the show tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thanks, Nathan, and thanks, Kathy, for keeping us together there. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.